The Chicago Bears have a real opportunity to have their cake and eat it too when it comes to adding Maxx Crosby to this team and possibly still having money to be flexible this offseason. We'll talk about how they can make that happen and while they have to get to agree to some interesting deals. All that and more on today's episode of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. Let's go. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the page. We do talk Chicago sports daily on this channel, only channel talk Chicago sports, how Chicago talks. So make sure that you stay in tune with us, man. So Chicago Bears, the report came out yesterday from ESPN, right? The perfect trade that the Bears could go out there and make for Maxx Crosby would be DJ Moore and a first round pick this year for Maxx Crosby and a 5th round pick next season. And a lot of people started talking about this and saying, you know, if it doesn't cost that much, that could be a very, very interesting deal. But the first thing that my brain went to was, okay, that's a great sounding deal, but what happens with dead cap money? What happens, you know, when you have to clear cap space to add Maxx Crosby in? What kind of moves would the Bears be able to actually do to get a deal like this done? And it doesn't, you know, cost you that much to make this happen. But once you go down that hill, you start to realize the Chicago Bears can kind of have their cake and eat it too when it comes to getting things done here this offseason. And one of the big things that I find very interesting is if you make just a couple of restructures to this roster, you can clear quite a bit of cap space if you're the Chicago Bears heading into this offseason. That allows you to go out and do things like re-sign some players that you want to have back on the roster. Of course, possibly look through free agency and maybe go out there and find somebody that you think is a really, really good player that can be an asset for you moving forward. So I've started going through this entire exercise, and not only are you able to clear some cap by making a couple of moves here that, I mean, for some might seem massive, but to me, it seemed like small moves for the additions that you can make to your team. I feel like this is a no-brainer if it's something that you can get done. Again, you have to have people that are willing to agree to certain deals. You have to have people that are willing to say, you know what, I am willing to restructure my contract because I want to win now. So starting off right now, according to OverTheCap, the Chicago Bears right now are $5.3 million over the cap. So you instantly start thinking, okay, where are we going to start making some cuts here to get ourselves under the cap so that we're not starting in a place of taking an L if you were to trade for a Maxx Crosby? To me, obviously, Tyreek Stevenson, number one, I appreciate you, but I think we saw a lot, you know, from what Dennis Allen wanted to add to this team. And by the end of the year, Tyreek Stevenson not really being a massive part of the rotation for the Chicago Bears DB room, right? And to the point, even, you know, in the playoffs where there was an opportunity for him to go out there and make plays, he does make a play, and then he immediately goes to the crowd and starts to cheer with them. Something that we have continued to see him do. You'd hope that he would learn that lesson, but unfortunately that has not worked out there. So Tyreek Stevenson off the bat, gone. Karan Amagaji, gone. That saves you another $1 million in salary cap, helps you get under. Roschon Johnson, gone. I would love to keep Roschon as a salary or as a special teams guy, but realistically, Roschon just hasn't been healthy enough. And then when he is healthy, he's not winning that spot. So that's done. $1.1 million off the book. And unfortunately, I know I made this joke on the show before, but a guy like Deion Hankins, who's making $885,000, you can release that, find a running back wherever you can find a running back, right? Those options are there. Take another 7th round guy in the draft. Y'all know how I feel about the running back position. We're not going to go in the depth. With those moves, right, you're creating a total relief of $6.6 million. So now you have gotten to yourself to a point where you are $1.3 million under the cap. Now, all of these moves that I'm talking about, right, I'm going to say, well, what does this do for the future of the team? So the 2027 impact does nothing. You got minimal bonus accelerations in here. There's no large guarantees involved in any of this. So you have an opportunity truly to go out there and save, you know, money by getting rid of depth pieces on the team that I think have shown you things. I'm not going to sit here and say they've shown you nothing, but realistically speaking, you're fine with moving on from. Now, if you're still rocking with the thought process here, hit that like button, subscribe to the page, man. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure that you got that notification bell selected so that you know every single time that we are dropping videos or go live. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love. Now is where we start to shed some of the big money on this, right? And the step 5 in this process for me is step 1 through 4, of course, cutting those 4. Now, step 5 in this process, there's one more cut that's a massive one. If you're going to do this and do it right, cut Tremaine Edmonds. Now, I have been one that has defended Tremaine. I think that Tremaine has played really well in this system, but if you're going all in and trying to have some cap space to possibly add more to your defensive side of the football here, with some interesting names also becoming available on the market, this is how you have to do it. And realistically, just to get Maxx Crosby in here, that cut saves you about $15 million. That gets you to $16.3 million under the cap. That's a great spot for you to be in if you're the Chicago Bears, because now you have a little bit of flexibility, especially when you start to go into things like restructures. Now, here's where it does get interesting, because there was a couple of options here that I thought that the Bears might really be able to benefit from. By the way, cutting Tremaine Edmonds has nothing but a positive impact on 2027. I want to make sure that I continue that. It removes an expensive veteran salary slot from the future of the books. There's no dead cap. There's nothing that's carried forward. There's nothing but upside if you cut Tremaine Edmonds, except for, the play on the field. This is where you're going to have young players step up. And that's going to be a repeating theme in all of this, right? If you're making these moves to try and do this, you're putting yourself in a very, I'm not going to say a win now scenario, but definitely win a lot quicker scenario, because that 2027 dead cap is going to be a little bit different. And I'll explain why when I get to that point. When it came to Montez Sweat, especially with Bradley Chubb hitting the market, there was a part of me that was like, would I rather have Bradley Chubb or would I rather have Montez Sweat? Now, Bradley Chubb at his best, right? A really, really good player, an elite level player. Would rather have Bradley Chubb. There is no question about it. With him becoming available, would love to see that. But when you start to look at the 2024 numbers, and realistically, kind of in a similar spot on bad defensive lines, Montez Sweat actually proved to be a little bit better. He graded out pretty well in the hurries. You want to talk about pressure? I think that he was up there as well. I'm talking about Montez here. Definitely, very comparable players, if I'm being honest, when you start to look at the things outside of quarterback hits. Bradley Chubb had it by a mile. And so, if you're talking about Bradley Chubb being the guy that you're getting, because you want to increase the quarterback hits, I think there's a conversation for that. But you're realistically talking about adding a piece opposite of Maxx Crosby here in all of this. So if you were to do this, right, not to say that it wouldn't make sense to go get Bradley Chubb, but you're fine keeping Montez Sweat. And honestly, if you were to restructure Montez, you get about $9.8 million in cap relief this year. That puts you around $26.2 million in cap relief this season. So now all of a sudden you've got money available to you. Now this one does hurt you because of the cap inflation that's going to happen in 2027. You're going from an estimated increase of 2.5 million to about 3.3 million by restructuring this deal. And of course, there's going to be one big one when we talk about the trade itself. But this is all pre-trade moves that you could do to create enough cap space for you to feel good about bringing Maxx Crosby in here and still being able, like I said, have your cake and eat it too scenario. So if you're down for the restructure of Montez Sweat, drop a bear down in the chat, in the comments below. Let me know how you guys feel to this point in all of this. Do you feel like this is something that at least seems feasible? Because what you're doing with Montez, you're converting that base salary probably into prorated bonuses, which is extremely common in the NFL, and I don't think it'd be something that Montez would scoff at if you were to do that. I'd be looking to do the exact same thing with Cole Kmet as well. So now you've made these cuts. You've got 2 restructures on the books right now. Cole Kmet being that second restructure, that gives you about $4 more million in cap relief, 4.3 million. You're now sitting with your cap at 30.6 million, coming off of a season where you thought you were going to really be struggling with cap space, with basically 4 depth cuts, a big cut in Tremaine Edmonds. I'm not going to say that it's not there. A big cut in Tremaine Edmonds, and then restructuring a couple of deals here. Again, you're not losing your mind in 2027 when you're talking about adding to the cap at this point, because you're doing good things here for the team. You're adding minimal money moving forward while keeping 2 players that I think, when you talk about Cole Kmet, when you talk about Tremaine Edmonds, right, you're keeping 2 players. I'm sorry, not Tremaine Edmonds. You talk about Montez Sweat. You're keeping 2 players that are benefiting from the situation that you're currently in. You add Maxx Crosby to Montez Sweat. Do we think that Montez is not going to improve? Do we think that quarterback pressures aren't going to be up? You're going to see more focus on Maxx Crosby the entire time, and he's somebody who can overcome that focus while Montez Sweat getting not double teamed, not getting the chip, and not getting that heavy focus. Now him being the Robin to Maxx Crosby's Batman. You're excited about what he's going to bring. And then Cole Kmet, you're keeping a player on the roster possibly a little bit longer, right? Adding a couple of years there where you feel like truly you have now a player that we all believe in Ben Johnson's system, that we all think could be a really good player and has been a really good player in Ben Johnson's system, does all of the little things, right? Is the guy who stepped up his game pass blocking, is the guy who stepped up his game, in minimal role and being called upon in tougher situations, I would say, because he's not getting his number called week in and week out, but still being able to make those plays. Those are good things for you. So to me, keeping Cole Kmet around in this situation, adding that impact to 2027, I'm okay with that, with where the cap is at, because with the restructure of Cole, I'm saving money this year that allows me to do more, and I'm keeping a player long term that you feel like is going to be a good player for you. Let me know again how you guys feel in the comments below on the restructure of Cole Kmet. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because realistically speaking, if you're talking about trading DJ Moore, I know, we say it apples to apples. It is the exact same. I'm trading DJ Moore, who's making $28.5 million, for Maxx Crosby, who is making $30 million. The problem is the Bears have heavy bonuses, and there's a $35 million dead cap hit that is going to occur for the Chicago Bears no matter what, right? If you move on from DJ, if you cut DJ, this is the dead cap that you have to deal with by moving on from him early in this process. But unless you find a way to get the Raiders to take all the money, which would be phenomenal, and there is a conversation for that as well, which would help you moving forward, but it doesn't change too much about this. So here's bottom line. Let's say you just trade it straight up. You're willing to take the dead cap hit to get a player like Maxx Crosby in the building. With that being the case there for you, the prorated bonus that he was to get this year was $4 million. If you trade him post June 1, you can take the hit essentially for just the 2026 money in 2026. Now, that doesn't mean that $31 million, which it was $4 million for 2026, that doesn't mean that $31 million is gone. It now moves over to your cap for 2027, which becomes a $31 million hit, which when you start to look at it, you say, yo, that is a crazy drop on your 2027 cap. Yeah, it absolutely inflates that. You're now paying essentially a salary for a player that is not on the team, but you're getting Maxx Crosby back from that, and you're getting a much better upside on the defensive line than where you were years before. You're also bringing Maxx Crosby back into the team, and you're still now saving money under the cap, because adding that in DJ Moore, you're adding about $55 million to your cap this season before you bring Maxx Crosby back in. I'm sorry, you're adding about $24 million to your cap this season, which would then when you bring Maxx Crosby back in, of course, that $30 million hits that he is owed. And so you'd still be about $25.1 million under the cap. These are good spots for you to be in. Yes, 2027 is going to be tough. And it is why I said, when you talk about adding a $31.4 million dead cap hit to your 2027 cap, it's going to make things tough. You know what it puts the pressure on? When you go in the draft and you need to make players actually go out there and be dominant, you need to find those names. You need to develop pieces. Ruben Hippolyte probably has to turn into something. Shamar Turner, what are you doing on this team? Because in 2027, you're not going to be able to go out there and just add big name pieces and make big money mistakes like you would in this situation. But with that being said, you are still putting yourself in a position after you add Maxx Crosby to this team where realistically you're sitting pretty under the cap. Now, if you want to get freaky on this, right? If you want to go crazy in all of this and you actually want to have as much money as possible, because here's the bottom line of all of this. You're trying to bring back some of the pieces that are currently on this team. And so what's a conversation that puts you in possibly bringing back a Jaquan Brisker? Of course, you want to bring back a Kevin Byard. And where you're sitting right now, maybe you're in that conversation. But with a restructure of Maxx Crosby on this team and where the cap is at right now. So right now I said the most recent cap number with all the moves that I made today, $25.1 million under the cap. If you were to go out there and restructure Maxx Crosby, you could get yourself to $37.1 million under the cap this year. Now, all of a sudden, you're having a serious conversation about the possibility of going out there and re-signing Jaquan Brisker because you're no longer priced out of bringing back Jaquan Brisker. Does it make your margins for 2027 a lot tougher? 100% it does. Does it make your margins moving forward a lot tougher? 100% it does. Guess what? Most championship teams aren't going to have a ton of margin for error. I get it. What we saw this year, we saw, not perfect teams going into battle on that. And so you're starting to think, okay, maybe we could just save this money in the cap. I still don't think that's realistic. If we're talking about going into next season, right, at a certain point, they're going to have to pay their guys. The part that you love about what the Patriots and the Seahawks have done is it's guys they've drafted that they're going to have to pay. They're not bringing in big free agents and stuff like that. But it is a lot of guys that you've drafted that you're talking about keeping around here, right? We're talking about keeping Cole Kmet. You've got Jalen Johnson on the roster. You've got possibly, if you wanted to bring him back, you could bring back Jaquan Brisker on the roster. You're keeping Kevin Byard, who wasn't drafted here, but has been a tremendous leader for you. You've already paid Kyler Gordon, and you're able to create this level of cap. This is how you play with the cap in a way that you give yourself the opportunity to build this team now, keep your young pieces, still be in a good position to pay Caleb Williams when it comes time to pay Caleb Williams, but also being creative enough with the cap to still add pieces to this roster. Because the one thing that we haven't talked about, and it could be a name that comes onto the roster here or comes onto the market here with where Kansas City is at with their cap situation, is could a former teammate of Joe Tooney's and Jawan Taylor actually be coming onto the market because of where the Chiefs are at and who they can pay? You need tackle help. You need to figure some things out at that tackle position. Jawan Taylor could be the answer that you're looking for. And yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit, but you're getting a veteran answer. Now, doesn't mean you have to sign him long-term either. There's ways, again, to find ways to make that happen and say, listen, you're going to hit the market again, but would you like an opportunity to go to a winning organization with a teammate you have? I'm not saying that's where it's at, but you're creating now this cap space where you can be in those conversations this year. Yes, you're taking a little bit of a hit in 2027, but for the most part, you're in this position where you feel like, okay, the cap hit's going to be harder then, but once that $31 million in dead cap comes off the books, we're in a really good position to go out there and still pay guys. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. Do you feel like this is a plan that is feasible for the Chicago Bears? I want to put everything on the screen that I said here today and kind of just recap this, right? The Bears start off $5 million under the cap. You make a couple of depth cuts there. You add about $6 million to that. You cut Tremaine Edmonds. You're adding about $15 million to that. You keep and restructure Montez Sweat instead of the flip side, which there is an opportunity on that of trading him away, but about $9.8 million saved on the cap there. You restructure Cole Kmet. You're saving about $4 million on the cap there. Yes, you add $24 million, but you're immediately taking that away in bringing in Maxx Crosby to this team. And then at the end of it, if you want to, there's a possibility for you to restructure Maxx Crosby, add another $12 million to that cap, and be at about $37.1 million moving forward. To me, this is a situation that if you are going to be in this, let's go get Max, let's be all in. You just saw, I'm sure everybody watched it, Caleb Williams going on Maxx Crosby's podcast. I'm sure there had to be a little side-eye conversation at some point in there. I'm like, hey man, it's a little cold in Chicago, but you come here, man, we can get some things done, right? Like I just feel like this, if you're going to go the Maxx Crosby route, you don't want to hamstring yourself. And this is a situation where it doesn't hamstring you moving forward for 10 years, for 5 years. 2027 is a little bit tough. You know what happens when 2027 is a little bit tough? You're going to have rookie players step up. You're going to have guys shine. Guys that you go get in the draft this season are going to have to step up because there's still holes for this team to fix. And when people go, you can't afford Maxx Crosby and fix the holes on your team. Yes, you can. It's going to take some creative cap space. It's going to take Montez Sweat and Cole Kmet being okay with you restructuring their contracts. They have to say yes to this for it to work, right? Or you have to go different directions. They don't have to be in on this. But I feel like you're getting guys that have been in some tough losing situations, and you're saying, hey, we're in a winning situation. If you take this bonus, you get your check, you're doing good, and you take a little bit more of a lump sum now, moving forward, you could be in a great position with a phenomenal teammate and maybe the ability for us to go out and add some other pieces to this team. Again, let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. If the Bears were to do this, who would be one player that you would want the Chicago Bears to go out there and sign? Let me know, like I said, in the comments below. Hey, as always, man, this is just my think piece. I think that this is the best path for you to go if you are the Chicago Bears. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love. As always, man, hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bed down. One love. Peace.